Hi everyone, thank you for having me here. I'm going to be presenting today a bit of work related to displacement and cultural continuity in a changing climate within the context of international development aid to Afghans in Iran. It is an early research to frame a project, and I'm going to share some preliminary insights which actually fed into the program and relevant project. However, any views or opinions expressed in this presentation are based on my empirical studies and self-reflections on my field experiences. They do not necessarily represent the views of the organization I've been working for. First, I'm going to unpack the cross-cutting, cross-sectoral issues as a result of displacement, socio-political upheavals, and climate crisis. Then I will examine the case of Kari's rehabilitation, followed by suggestions of my work in terms of sustainable livelihoods. 42 years on since the 1979 Syrian invasion, followed by the US war of 2001, and after Taliban takeover in 2021, have resulted in the longest protracted refugee situation in the history, which is Afghan displacement. After Taliban takeover, more than 3 million Afghans have arrived in host countries, and the ones displaced or departed still are facing with extreme climate condition on the road. And Iran is now acknowledged as the first refugee hosting country globally, which is a big deal. And this is the largest host country for the Afghans facing with severe environmental, economic, political issues itself. And the refugee located in the country, actually, if you look at the map, are also placed in highly at-risk regions in terms of climate impacts, which are the lighter areas on the map. And those climate risks are being exacerbated for the refugees who already lack access to services and facing and experiencing socio-political upheaval impacting their livelihoods, their identity, and sense of belonging. While the existing interventions of international community, including intergovernmental organizations like United Nations, acknowledge in the first place the protection issues and provision of some kind of short-term ad hoc kind of aid like non-food items or water and sanitation services, hygiene kits, shelter, and emergency response during a multidimensional and socio-political and climate crisis in the country. Investment in durable solutions and sustainable livelihoods and preservation of cultural identity, values, and social capital for the Afghan transnational migrants is not really a priority. And we are seeing that we are allocating hefty budget under shelter, wash, and emergency items, but we are not really investing on sustainable livelihoods and long-term kind of actions. And why a focus on livelihoods is needed? When it comes to resettlement and relocation activities, this is on the top priority of the agenda that states should ensure at a minimum the restoration, but ideally the improvement of livelihoods of displaced persons as both a matter of right and as an essential component in prevention of impoverishment. And actually the framework that I consulted is sustainable livelihoods, which goes beyond physical dimension, financial dimensions. And it's also about social dimension, like social connections, belonging, connectedness, human dimension, employment, and natural dimension, common pool resources, land availability and size, as well as cultural dimension, language, cultural heritage, and place attachment. And this is a kind of assessment conducted externally among more than 200 of resettlement and relocation cases, who among them, more than 84 cases, and actually the person who are surveyed somehow reported some kind of negative impact of the cultural dimension of their livelihoods, which is of high concern. And this is why I would like to somehow shed some lights on cultural dimensions of livelihoods, and to say why it is very much needed. Getting back to the case of Afghan refugees in Iran, when it comes to livelihoods impacted by climate change in Iran, the majority of Afghans who historically have been skilled and engaged in farming, irrigation, water harvesting, or any other kind of agriculture-related businesses are still working with the same businesses in Iran, which are low-status jobs and highly vulnerable service sections to environmental risks. In addition to a similar language and deep historical and cultural bonds between Iranian and Afghans, Afghans and Iranians also share a long history of water scarcity, so this is not something new to us. And as a climate resilient water solution for agriculture purposes, which is one of many solutions we used to have for dealing with severity of the climate in our countries, the shared tradition of natural resource management called Persian Qanat or Qaris, which is inscribed by UNESCO in 2016, have played a vital role in communities' life and livelihood since ancient time, based on a kind of very robust engineering system, but also a communal service co-production scheme. This is actually a picture of Qanat. And now when we are talking about development intervention and some kind of rehabilitation across refugee-located areas, we see that there are a number of Qaris or Qanats that are still working on the refugee-located areas and provinces that I showed earlier, because they are actually located in arid and semi-arid regions. And in the last 3 years, given all those difficulties of access to water during Afghan emergency response, there has been a renewed attention to those traditional irrigation techniques and solutions in agriculture sector. A number of rehabilitation activities and programs are also implemented by international, intergovernmental, and UN agencies in refugee-located areas. However, the point is that those isolated projects and the nature of international development aid and policy framework, as I mentioned, would rather focus on physical rehabilitation of those heritage systems. While those actually systems are very much community-based and based on cooperation. Rather than a broader appreciation of socio-economic and cultural processes in those projects, the international interventions are very ad hoc, physical, project-based, and they rigidly designed to deliver a limited number of predefined outcomes. Like we do have certain result framework, and we want to give people access to water, so we're going to reach our targets, and that's it. For instance, we have some kind of priorities like physical development of refugee spaces. But in my view, this cannot support the long-term and multi-sectoral planning needed to deal with broader spectrum of challenges Afghan community face in Iran. And these include preserving, reconnecting with cultural identities while it is challenged, and rebuilding sustainable livelihoods linked to the migrants' values and culture to enhance long-term resilience to current and future shocks. Sometimes when I see what is happening now in Iran, and the level of discrimination towards refugees, I think with myself that the international community really need to do better in terms of cultural changes and considering cultural values. This is why I would suggest for reclaiming the culture in the context of development aid, and as a, for instance, prototype, we can link heritage-dependent sustainable livelihoods to communal revitalization of traditional environmental system, highlighting the agency, social cohesion of displaced population based on our shared kind of heritage, which used to be and still is climate resilient. And this would definitely contribute to long-term resilience of the Afghan population, be it in Iran or the country they will resettle, or even in case of repatriation to Afghanistan. And just so you know, this research actually fed into a program which has been recently secured some $90,000 to somehow link preservation and rehabilitation of cultural heritage to sustainable livelihoods for women head of households in Iran. Thank you for listening to me.